It started with a coffee. Not the first time I'd brought Olivia something during work hours, far from it. Over the last 3 years of marriage, I'd probably dropped in on her a dozen times with pastries, drinks, or just to steal 10 minutes of her day. But this visit would stick in my memory for a long time. Not for what I brought, but for what I saw, and more importantly, what I heard. That morning, Olivia had texted that her day was jam-packed. Running on fumes, she wrote. Wish I could clone myself. That's what made me think of it, her favorite almond milk latte from the cafe near our place. She always said it helped her push through marathon meetings. It was a small gesture, sure, but that was kind of my thing. I liked being the guy who remembered what made her smile, even on autopilot. The office was on the 3rd floor of a renovated industrial space, exposed brick, glass walls, the works. I'd been there before, enough times that most of the front desk staff knew my name. Today, though, no one was there when I walked in. I figured I'd just make the drop quick and let her get back to it. As I got closer to her department, I heard voices. Olivia's, unmistakably, through the thin glass wall. I slowed my pace, not intentionally eavesdropping, just caught by the familiarity of her tone. Just rescheduled a meeting with my husband, she said. Tell him something came up. Ryan got in from Dallas earlier than expected. It's fine, just don't mention it to him. I stopped. The phrase "my husband" twisted in my stomach. Not because it was strange, it was just the context. The way she said it. Like I was an obstacle. An inconvenience to be rescheduled. The second part hit even harder. Ryan. From Dallas. I didn't know a Ryan. Dallas was never mentioned. And the secrecy, the quiet command not to tell me, was unmistakable. She wasn't even trying to mask it with code. I took a breath. Rationalized. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe Ryan was a client. Maybe this was all innocent and just bad timing. So I stepped forward, slowly, my mind a jumble of assumptions and excuses I was creating on her behalf. When I walked in, Olivia looked like someone had cut the power to her system. Her smile was too fast, too big. Jacob. What a surprise. She never smiled like that. Not at me. Not lately. I held up the coffee like it was a peace offering. Thought you might need this. She looked at the cup like it was something fragile. That's sweet. Thank you. I've barely had time to breathe today. Behind her, the assistant she'd just spoken to was now deeply invested in a stack of folders, clearly aware something awkward had just happened. I waited. There was a silence that stretched a second too long. Long enough for me to expect an explanation. But it didn't come. Instead, Olivia reached for the coffee and set it gently on her desk. You're the best, she said in a voice that felt rehearsed. Really? I don't know what I'd do without you. She didn't take a sip. Didn't offer a hug. Didn't even ask me to sit down. I stood there for a moment, trying to pretend this wasn't weird. Didn't mean to interrupt, I said finally. Just thought I'd stop by. She nodded quickly. Totally fine. I'm just juggling a few fires today. Quarter-end reporting. And Ryan's visit is throwing the whole schedule off. There it was. His name again. Ryan? I asked, keeping my tone light. Curious. Not confrontational. Oh, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah. He's one of the regional VPs. We've been trying to land him on a partnership proposal. He flew in last minute, kind of threw the day into chaos. She said it like she was reading a press release. Got it, I said. Another silence. This one heavier. I should let you get back, I added. Didn't mean to complicate your fires. She nodded, smiled again, too fast, and turned back to her screen. Thanks for the coffee. I walked out. The door clicked shut behind me and I stood there in the hallway staring at the coffee I just brought in. I knew she wasn't going to drink it. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. Something had changed. Something small but permanent, like a hairline fracture in glass. By the time I got back to my car, the doubts had already taken root. Who was Ryan, really? Why reschedule a meeting with me, her husband, for him? And why did she ask her assistant not to tell me? There were logical explanations, sure. I clung to them for a while. But they didn't settle right. I spent the rest of the day going through the motions. Work. Emails. A call with my manager. But my mind kept looping back to her office, her face, her words. And that untouched coffee. Just sitting there. Like a symbol of something she'd once wanted and no longer did. That evening, Olivia came home later than usual. She looked tired genuinely, but she barely made eye contact. Said something about a long meeting, then disappeared into the bedroom with her phone. We didn't talk about my visit. She didn't bring it up. Neither did I. But something was now in the room with us. A third presence. Silent, cold, and uninvited. And that's where it began. I didn't go digging for the truth. It came to me piece by piece, like water dripping into a crack, slow, silent, persistent. After that strange visit to Olivia's office, I started noticing things I'd missed before. Not dramatic revelations. Just moments. Odd behaviors. Things that felt off in hindsight, like a movie I'd seen before but only now understood the twist. First, there were the photos. About a month ago, Olivia had deleted our shared cloud album. Said her phone was running out of space and she needed to tidy things up. At the time, I didn't question it. I figured she was just being her usual efficient self. But now that explanation felt thin. Especially when I realized the deletion wasn't just from her device, it wiped the entire album. Years of memories gone with a tap. When I asked her about it later, casually, trying not to sound paranoid, she just waved it off. They're backed up somewhere, I think, she said, scrolling through her phone. We can re-upload them. But we never did. Then came the passwords. She changed them all, her phone, her laptop, even her smartwatch. Not just changed, but locked them down like she was guarding nuclear codes. Olivia wasn't secretive by nature. We'd always had an unspoken transparency. But now her phone was glued to her side. Face down, silent. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen at night. Now it came to bed with her, tucked under her pillow like a secret. I tried to rationalize it at first. Everyone deserves privacy. But this was different. This was a shift. A closing off. She also started working late constantly. It wasn't just a week or two. It became a pattern. I'd get texts around 6, might be late. Big project. Running behind. Don't wait up. The messages were always brief. Polite. But detached. I stopped asking what she was working on after the third or fourth time she gave me the same vague reply. I wanted to believe her. But it's hard to believe someone who doesn't look you in the eye anymore. Then came the perfume. Olivia's signature scent used to be something soft and floral. Subtle. Familiar. But one night, when she hugged me after walking through the door, I caught something else sharper, spicier. Masculine. It lingered on her clothes like a whisper that wasn't meant for me. You wearing something new? I asked, trying to keep it light. She blinked, then sniffed her sleeve. Oh, maybe. A coworker sprayed something in the office. It probably stuck. It wasn't convincing. But I let it go. Just like I let go of everything else. Because when you love someone, you give them the benefit of the doubt until the doubt's stacked too high to ignore. One day, I noticed something odd. She left for a morning jog in sneakers and yoga pants. That part was normal. What wasn't normal was that she came back nearly an hour later wearing heels. I was in the garage fixing a loose cabinet door when she walked in. She froze for half a second like she hadn't expected to see me there. Did you go running in those? I asked, half joking but curious. She looked down like she hadn't even noticed. Oh no, I changed at the office. I had to stop by and grab a file. At 7:45 a.m.? I nodded, said nothing. But something about it didn't track. It was like that over and over. Nothing by itself was a smoking G***N. Just inconsistencies. Odd timing. Unfamiliar clothes. An increasing emotional distance that no one could explain but anyone could feel. She also started receiving more calls she wouldn't take in front of me. Her phone would buzz and she'd either ignore it or step out to answer. Once, during dinner, she got up mid-bite and said, "Work call, back in a sec." She spent 15 minutes in the hallway. I cleared the table while she whispered into the receiver. When she came back, she smiled like nothing happened and asked if I wanted to watch something on Netflix. I said no. I started spending more time in the guest room. Not officially, not every night, but enough. Some nights I'd pretend to fall asleep on the couch. Other nights I'd wait for her to go to bed and then drift off alone with a podcast playing in my ears, trying to drown out the questions I didn't have the courage to ask out loud. I was scared of the answer. That's the truth of it. Scared of what I might find. Scared to be right. Because if I was right, then everything I'd believed about our life, our marriage, was a lie. And I wasn't ready to face that yet. So I played my part. I made breakfast. Did the laundry. Paid the bills. Smiled when we ran into neighbors. Pretended nothing was wrong even though I knew something was. Pretended her laugh still sounded like home even though it echoed differently now. More hollow. More guarded. And still, the signs kept coming. One evening, I was tidying up the kitchen and noticed a receipt tucked inside the recycling. It was for a restaurant we hadn't been to in months. One we both loved, but which she'd said was too out of the way to bother with anymore. The timestamp was from a Tuesday evening. I remembered that night. She texted she was grabbing takeout and working late. But this wasn't takeout. This was table service. For two. She hadn't brought leftovers home. Not even a to-go box. That was the moment the dam started to break. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time that night, staring at that flimsy piece of paper, wondering how something so small could feel so heavy. There was a man's name on the receipt, Ryan P. I didn't recognize it at first, but then it clicked. Ryan. From Dallas. The name from her office. The name she hadn't expected me to hear. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to her, listening to her breathing, wondering what else she hadn't told me, wondering how long this had been going on, wondering if she even noticed that I wasn't touching her anymore, that I hadn't kissed her goodnight in weeks. She didn't turn toward me once, didn't say my name in her sleep like she used to. The next morning, she got up early and left a note saying she had a long day ahead. I made coffee, sat alone at the table, and stared at the spot where she used to sit across from me, laughing at memes or complaining about her meetings. That version of her felt like a different person now. Someone I was still married to but no longer knew. Someone who was slipping away, one carefully worded excuse at a time. And for the first time I stopped pretending it was just in my head. I wish I could say I confronted her, that I stood up in a blaze of righteous fury and demanded answers. But I didn't. I wasn't ready for a fight. Not yet. I needed certainty, evidence, not just suspicions. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her old laptop. It was an older model, one she hadn't used in over a year, maybe more. It sat on a shelf in our shared home office, mostly collecting dust next to photo albums and forgotten paperwork. She used a newer work-issued one now, guarded by passwords and fingerprint locks. But the old one, that was a relic. I knew the login. I had helped set it up. It was supposed to be harmless. Just a look. Just to see if there were any old messages. Anything that could confirm what my gut had been screaming for weeks. What I found broke me. I started with her browser history, mostly blank. But something told me that if Olivia had been careful on her phone, she might have slipped on the laptop before she stopped using it altogether. I downloaded a file recovery program, one I'd used years ago when I accidentally deleted some work files. Took a while to run. By the time it finished, my heart was pounding. There was a recovered folder labeled archive_October. A plain name, unassuming. Inside were **TS message drafts, a few emails, some incomplete, some still intact. That's where I saw his name again. Ryan. It started off innocently enough. A few forwarded meeting invites, project timelines, team reports. Then, something shifted. I scrolled down to a saved draft, untitled, dated almost 6 months ago. Ryan, you were right. I can't stop thinking about that night in Vancouver. My stomach turned. There were photos, too. Nothing explicit, but enough to paint the picture. A hotel room selfie of Olivia with her hair up, wine in her hand, wearing a robe I'd never seen before. Another one of her and Ryan at a pier, arms around each other, laughing. Vancouver's skyline behind them. A timestamp marked it just 2 weeks before our anniversary. She told me it was a business trip. She'd FaceTimed me that week, said she was exhausted from meetings, that she missed me. I stared at the image, feeling like I'd just been handed a version of reality I hadn't agreed to live in. There were emails, too. One read, "Counting down the days. I wish I didn't have to go back to pretending." Another, "He still doesn't know. Sometimes I feel guilty. Other times, I just feel free." Those words didn't feel like they came from someone torn by temptation. They came from someone who had already crossed a line and never looked back. The final blow came from a file labeled Notes and Assurin. It wasn't long. Just a few lines of text she must have jotted down before sending something more polished later. But the rawness of it made it worse. "I know it's over with Jacob. I just haven't told him yet. Every day I spend in that house feels like lying. You make me feel like the version of myself I forgot existed. The version I want to be." She didn't say maybe. She didn't say, "I'm confused." She said, "It's over." And I hadn't even known we were ending. I closed the laptop. My hands shook. For a long time, I just sat there, surrounded by the artifacts of our life, wedding photos, books we'd picked out together, framed postcards from trips we'd taken when things still felt real. But it all looked fake now. A set. Props in a play I didn't realize had changed scripts. There was no yelling. No breakdown. Just silence. A collapse. Like watching a building fall in slow motion, dust and memories rising in its place. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't cry. I couldn't. It felt like even my emotions were holding their breath. I walked to the kitchen. Made a cup of tea I didn't drink. Stared out the window for what might have been hours. I thought about all the times I defended her in my own mind. All the excuses I gave her, the benefit of the doubt I handed out like candy. None of it mattered now. I had proof. And I hated that I ever needed it. That night, she came home late. Said something about a client dinner that ran long. She kissed me on the cheek like she always did, asked if I had eaten. I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not affection. Just distance. A vast canyon between us that had taken shape while I wasn't looking. I told her I was tired. That I had work to finish. She nodded, headed to the bathroom, started brushing her teeth like nothing had changed. But everything had. I went to bed in the guest room. Not out of spite. Not to send a message. Because I couldn't sleep next to someone who had already decided I was gone. And in the dark, as the house fell quiet, I realized something. I wasn't trying to fix this anymore. I was waiting for the right time to let go. The decision didn't come in a storm. There was no shouting match, no slammed doors or shattered plates. Just quiet clarity. A line crossed in silence. Olivia had already chosen her path, I was simply acknowledging it. I spent most of that weekend packing. Not my things, hers. Piece by piece, methodically, I moved through the house and gathered everything that belonged to her. Clothes, shoes, toiletries. Books from the shelves, half-used serums from the bathroom drawer, even her winter coat from the closet by the door. I didn't throw anything away. I didn't break anything. I wasn't interested in revenge. This wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. And the truth was she didn't live here anymore. Not in spirit. Not in love. She'd vacated this marriage long before I had the courage to see it. There was something oddly therapeutic about it. Folding shirts. Zipping up bags. Separating the pieces of her life from mine. I worked in silence, only stopping to label boxes, office, closet, skincare, so nothing would get lost. I didn't want excuses to see her again later. No forgotten items, no lingering "can I come by to grab." I filled her old canvas tote with her favorite tea and the books she always kept on the nightstand, Margaret Atwood, Nora Ephron, that one hardcover she reread every December. I wrapped her jewelry box in a towel and tucked it carefully between her scarves. I found the necklace she used to wear on our first dates, the silver one with the tiny locket she never opened. I placed it in a smaller pouch and zipped it into her purse. I was deliberate. Careful. I wanted to honor what we had been, even if she no longer could. By Sunday afternoon, the house looked different. Lighter. Like it had been holding its breath and now finally it could exhale. I loaded everything into the trunk of my car and drove to her office. It was closed, the lot mostly empty except for a security guard making rounds and a cleaning van parked at the far end. I texted her assistant, brief, professional. Dropping off Olivia's personal items at the front desk. Please make sure she receives them. Then I carried the boxes inside and left them stacked neatly by her desk. The same desk where I'd once brought her coffee. The same desk where I'd stood just weeks ago trying to believe the lie that nothing was wrong. I didn't leave a note. No explanation. No goodbye. By the time I got back home, the sky had turned a dull gray. It looked like rain, but it never came. That evening, I changed the locks. Not out of spite, out of necessity. I called a locksmith and watched from the porch as he worked. He didn't ask why. He just nodded when I said, "Fresh start," and handed me the new keys without a word. I updated the security codes on the alarm system. Changed the garage pin. Disabled her fingerprint from the front door app. She wouldn't need access anymore. I removed her shared photos from the hallway wall. The honeymoon *T from Maui. The one from our first anniversary at the cabin upstate. The silly Polaroid we took in the kitchen, flour on her nose and laughter frozen in time. I boxed them up and stored them in the attic, not out of bitterness, but because they no longer belonged in the present. They were echoes. Souvenirs from a version of us that no longer existed. Somewhere around midnight, I sat on the couch and looked around the living room. Felt emptier. Not just because her things were gone, but because the illusion was gone too. For the first time, I wasn't wondering what she was doing, or who she was texting, or whether she was lying. For the first time, I felt peace. There's a kind of grief that doesn't come with crying. Comes with stillness, with clarity. That's what this was. A quiet ending. The next morning, Olivia called. I didn't answer. She called again around noon. Then later that evening, I let them all go to voicemail. I didn't listen. By the third day, she showed up. It was a Wednesday, midweek, ordinary in every way except for her standing on the porch with her arms crossed, eyes scanning the windows like she could see through the curtains. I opened the door halfway. Nothing more. "Jacob," she said, a soft panic in her voice. "What's going on?" I didn't move. "You got your things?" Her lips parted. Why would you do that? Why didn't you talk to me first?" I leaned against the frame. What more was there to say? She stepped closer. "This isn't fair." I raised an eyebrow. "Fair?" She blinked rapidly. "I was going to explain." "No," I said. "You were going to continue." She fell silent. I kept my tone calm, detached. I didn't want drama. I just wanted her gone. "You left a long time ago, Olivia," I said. "I just caught up." She reached out instinctively, like she still had a place in this house, in this life. But her hand dropped when she saw I wasn't moving. "You didn't even let me explain," she said, voice cracking now. I nodded slowly. "That's true. I didn't." Then I closed the door. I didn't slam it, didn't lock it in her face. Just closed it. Gently. Finally. Later that night, she texted. I didn't read it. She sent another one the next day, longer. I deleted it without opening. There was nothing she could say that would matter more than what she'd already shown me. I wasn't looking for an apology. I was reclaiming peace. In the days that followed, I built new habits. Cooked different meals. Took different routes to work. Rearranged the furniture in the bedroom. Not to erase her, but to remind myself that life didn't stop just because she checked out of it. I turned our old room into something new. Hung different curtains, swapped the bedding, moved the dresser. The first night I slept there alone, I expected to feel emptiness. Instead, I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. No more late-night pacing. No more wondering where she was. No more pretending not to care. She wasn't here anymore. And neither was the version of me that waited for her. She didn't stay quiet for long. 3 days after I closed the door on her, Olivia came back. This time more composed, more rehearsed. She rang the bell twice and waited, arms crossed, the faintest tremor in her stance betraying the calm expression she tried to wear. I opened the door halfway again. She tried to smile. "I just want to talk." I didn't answer. I stepped aside, letting her in. Not out of kindness, but because I wanted to get it over with. She stepped into the living room like it was unfamiliar, her eyes scanning the space. She noticed the missing photos, the coat rack empty of her scarves, the bookshelf rearranged. I saw it register. "You really went through with it," she said, her voice soft but sharp. I sat on the edge of the armchair, hands clasped together. "Say what you came to say." She stayed standing. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and I watched as her tone shifted from cautious to defensive. "You know," she started, pacing slowly, "the way you handled this, dropping my stuff off like some eviction notice, was incredibly cold. I came home, and I was just gone. No warning. No conversation. I said nothing. Do I deserve that?" she asked, gesturing vaguely. "After everything?" "Everything," I echoed. She faltered. "You know what I mean. Years. A marriage." I looked at her directly. "Exactly. A marriage." She crossed her arms again, bristling. "You just erased me, Jacob. Like I didn't exist. Like we didn't exist." I could feel something in me shift. Some part of me wanting to react, to defend, to throw her own actions back in her face. But I didn't. I stayed calm. She wasn't here to repair anything. She was here to preserve her narrative, to soften the consequences. "I didn't erase you," I said. "You handed me the eraser." She flinched slightly. "That's not fair." I stood, voice still level. "You talk about fairness, Olivia, but you made every decision that brought us here. You chose him. You chose to lie. You chose silence." "I had reasons," she said quickly. "Things you wouldn't understand." "Try me," I replied. "Go ahead." She hesitated. I was lost. I felt disconnected. You were distant, always focused on work. I didn't mean for it to happen, but Ryan was just there. Stop, I said gently, holding up a hand. Don't twist this into a sad accident. You didn't trip and fall into someone's arms. You orchestrated it. You made plans. You made time. You hid it. Her voice cracked. I wasn't trying to hurt you. But you did. She sat down, finally, shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked small, unmoored. I thought maybe we could talk through it, she said, almost to herself. That we could work it out. I let the silence sit for a beat. You're not here for reconciliation, I said. You're here for absolution. She looked at me, stunned. You want me to help you feel better about what you did, I continued. But I'm not giving that to you. Tears welled in her eyes. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a choice. Repeatedly. She wiped her cheek, anger flaring behind the sadness. You're really going to throw away everything we had? Just like that. Everything we had, I said slowly, was gone the moment you decided I didn't deserve honesty. She stood abruptly. So that's it? You're just done. I nodded. I was done the night I found the emails. I just hadn't told you yet. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could almost see her calculating what to say next. Then her voice hardened. You think you're so noble, Jacob? Like you handled this with such grace. But walking away without a word? That's not strength. That's cowardice. I tilted my head slightly. Is that how you're choosing to see it? She laughed bitterly. Of course you'd spin it like you're above all this. Like you're the better person. I'm not better, I said. I'm just finished. She stood there for another moment, searching for something else to say. Something that would land. But the weight of the conversation hung between us like fog. Eventually, she turned toward the door. You know, she said as she reached for the handle, you'll regret not hearing me out. Someday. I didn't reply. She waited a beat longer, one last chance for me to call her back, to soften. But I didn't. And she left. The house felt even quieter after that. But not hollow. Just clean. I stood for a while in the space where she'd sat, trying to feel something: anger, sadness, relief. All I felt was stillness. That strange peace that comes not from joy, but from resolution. There was no desire for revenge. No fantasy of regret. Just space where something used to be. That night, I made dinner for one. Watched a documentary she would have hated. Slept deeply. When I woke up, I didn't reach for my phone expecting a message. I didn't glance at the front door expecting her return. I got up. Made coffee. Sat with the quiet. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. I wasn't healing because she apologized. I was healing because I no longer needed her to. The quiet didn't last long. About a week after Olivia left the house for the final time, she started trying to pull me back in. Not through apologies, not directly, but through gestures meant to stir emotion. It started with a memory post on social media. A photo of us from a trip to Asheville 3 years ago, her caption carefully crafted, "Some memories never fade." It was vague enough not to raise eyebrows, but pointed enough to make sure I saw it. Mutual friends tagged. A subtle trap. Then came the proximity games. I saw her parked outside the building where I worked. Not once, but twice. She didn't approach, just sat there in her car, pretending to scroll, pretending not to care. One day, she even went so far as to walk into the cafe next door minutes after I had stepped out. Coincidence? No. Calculated? Absolutely. Friends started reaching out. Noticing the odd behavior. A couple of them hinted that Olivia was struggling and wishing things had gone differently. One even said she was hoping I'd reconsider, give it another try. I didn't engage. Instead, I called my lawyer. Within days, I had finalized the property separation paperwork and started the formal divorce filing. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn her. I just sent the documents through her attorney with no preface, no postscript. That was my message. This wasn't a trial separation. This wasn't me cooling off. This was over. When she finally did reach out directly, it was in the form of a long, emotionally fraught email. Lines about how she missed my voice, how she made the worst mistake of her life, how she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. I read it once. And never responded. Her regret wasn't enough to undo what had been done. She wasn't mourning me, she was mourning her image of herself. The one where she could still be seen as the person who tried, not the one who left. I didn't owe her redemption. I owed myself peace. I moved to Austin in late spring. New job, smaller apartment, different routines. The first few weeks were hard. The mornings were the worst, those quiet spaces between waking and distraction when the old patterns still tried to find their way back in. But I got up anyway. I started running. I joined a local photography class on Saturdays. I picked up books I'd meant to read for years and found comfort in filling the silence with my own company. The strangest part of healing wasn't the pain, it was the clarity. Once the noise was gone, I could see how long I'd been shrinking. How many parts of myself I had folded away to keep the peace, to avoid rocking a boat that was already drifting. What felt like a loss turned out to be a return. To stillness. To control. To myself. I started feeling something new, not bitterness, not resentment. Just gratitude. For the distance. For the truth even when it hurt. Because it gave me permission to stop hoping for something that was never going to be whole again. One morning, I stood on my apartment balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sun break over the buildings. It wasn't remarkable, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. There's no epilogue where Olivia and I cross paths at a bookstore. No letter that changes everything. No cinematic closure. Just the quiet truth. Some people leave. Some stories end. And sometimes that's the beginning you never knew you needed.